Miracles prove the power of healing that anyone can use. It proves that healing is not all atoms and molecules, but that there are deeper truths going on.
Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Glenda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from PodChange.com. We are exploring the mystical side of life once again this week. If you enjoy our conversations, remember to subscribe, share with your friends. Your likes and comments really support the channel, and we appreciate them. Today, we are talking the physics and metaphysics of miraculous healing. I have spiritual explorer, teacher, and author Joseph Selbie with me. Welcome back, Joseph.
Thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Joseph, the last time you came on, we talked about breaking through the limits of the brain. Today, we're going deeper into our beliefs and how they can block us from healing. So I'm curious, Joseph, what inspired you to write a book about miraculous healing? And we are talking miracles here, right?
Yes, although this gives me an opening to say miracles prove the power of healing that anyone can use. It proves that healing is not all atoms and molecules, but that there are deeper truths going on that any one of us can put to use in our own life. But the miracle stories definitely get people's attention. I'm hoping that people, by learning about how physics and science in general support this kind of extraordinarily rapid healing, that they will see that it's possible for them to use their own inner soul powers, their own inner abilities to self-heal, and that they don't have to be limited by the typical understanding of what we can and can't heal from that comes to us, unfortunately, through modern medicine.
That's quite the statement you made, that physics and science actually support our ability to rapidly heal from things that perhaps a medical community wouldn't agree on.
Well, the medical community is ironically using physical laws that are known as classical physics, that in terms of where physics has gone since the advent of classical physics, makes modern medicine over 100 years out of date. The foundation of medical science is classical physics, and it's expressed through biochemistry, it's expressed through molecular biology, but its essential concept is that matter is an enduring, fixed thing, and it interacts with different kinds of energies, and those energies interacting with molecules and atoms, according to modern science, explain everything that happens in the physical body.
Do you think that modern medicine is actually starting to shift a little bit? That the medical community is starting to investigate some of those quantum techniques or quantum possibilities in order to improve their results?
I think there's two challenges to that, and one is somewhat the obvious, which is modern doctors and medical researchers are pretty happy with what they have. You know, modern medicine, pretty much outside of the viewpoint of those of us who embrace alternative approaches to health, they're pretty pleased with what they can do for people, and they're not really looking for some huge new improvement. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, I was going to say more challenging, but that first one is pretty challenging if they're completely happy with what they have. But the second challenge is that physics that we're talking about that goes beyond classical physics is all energy based, and it uses completely different conceptual tools, discovery tools. It has a whole new world of its view of how reality operates. So the average doctor, even if interested, who might want to seriously challenge the paradigm today, would have to take 9 years of training to attain a PhD level of physics that would perhaps give them credibility in their field. So it's not a small thing to try to integrate and incorporate the sort of energy physics, energy-centered physics like quantum physics and string theory, even relativity theory of Einstein's are all more energy-centered than classic physics is. So it's a big jump. But I think there might be cracks appearing from a somewhat unexpected source. Researchers are beginning to see that the brain may operate with quantum effects, that the brain may achieve quantum states. It's a huge leap forward because for the last 100 years, it's been denied that quantum states can even exist in the physical body. According to conventional wisdom, that was impossible. So now, with some research beginning to indicate that the only way that the brain could behave in certain instances, one that has recently been studied, is that the brain can vibrate, different neurons in the brain can vibrate in exactly the same frequency all over the brain, and they can change frequency all over the brain in an instant. Now, it's only possible if there's some kind of communication going on between those neurons that isn't just the passage of electrical signals or chemical signals in those neurons. So they're beginning to see some cracks, but it's early days.
Now, when we're talking miraculous healing, we're not talking about taking herbs or supplements or some type of ongoing alternative therapy. What exactly are we using to heal?
The short answer is that we're using our own innate abilities, that our emotions and our really deep convictions, our bedrock beliefs, and our own soul nature are what can effect self-healing. And we use those all the time. At whatever state of health we have at the moment, it is a result of those three things. If you have the finest medical care and you have the finest alternative medical care for a condition that you have, say cancer, but on a deep level, you don't believe you can heal from it, you won't heal from it. Even though other people who seemingly are getting the same care do heal and you don't. It's not about genes. It's not about anything congenital. It's what you deeply believe. Now, the other side is even more fascinating for that equation. You can be from a medical doctor's point of view, at death's door with weeks or months to live, and you can survive if you have that deeply held belief that you will. So that right there is the most astonishingly powerful part of who we are.
One of the examples that you gave in your book that really surprised me was someone with multiple personality disorder whose eye color changed depending on which personality was present. It just goes to show you how our bodies are really representations of what's going on inside.
According to the foundations of modern medicine, that is all impossible. And that sort of makes most doctors squirm a little bit because it seems very well documented that these things happen. So the typical reaction is just to veer away, just go away from it and talk about something else, because it is fundamentally impossible, and yet it does happen. And it's been well documented that it happens.
I think it's probably good to state that you do not have to be a quantum physicist in order to tap into this potential. You just have to believe it's possible, right?
That's a very good point. I put the physics in the beginning of the book to help people feel comfortable with believing things outside of the medical model, to give them inner permission to embrace the possibility of extraordinarily rapid healing, or more importantly for most people, the ability to heal from any disease. No disease is incurable. And the more we believe that it is true, that no disease is incurable, makes it much more likely that we will heal.
So, Joseph, how can people actually tap into that power? You talked a little bit about beliefs, and the only thing I would say about that is that sometimes we consciously think that we're thinking positively or we have a supportive belief. But underneath that, in the unconscious, is a whole different story. Something else is going on.
It's very challenging to really know what we believe. And we also have decades, for many of us, many decades for some of us, of being conditioned by that modern medical model. And it goes in deep. What I recommend to people is don't try to ferret out what you do believe, because you may never know, but rather consciously build beliefs with more focus and determination than you tended to acquire the beliefs you have. You know, our beliefs were accumulated sort of haphazardly, really. But if you're very deliberate about it, if you study books about subtle healing and energy healing and cases of miraculous healing, and there are many of them, there are many books to be read about them, you'll be overcoming that conditioning much more rapidly than you gained that conditioning. But I think the number one thing I recommend to all people, because it's experiential rather than intellectual, is make connection to spirit, make connection to your soul. Number one way I recommend to do that is meditation. Meditation has been put forward to have a lot of benefits, and all of that is true. But most deeply, the greatest benefit we get from meditation is that we directly experience that we are more than we know. We're more than we thought. They're more than we have previously experienced. We may not fully comprehend what that more is and what that more means for us, but because we experience it, that is the most powerful form of learning there is. The deeper the experience you have, the more it will, change your beliefs, open your heart to these deeper experiences. But that experiential aspect of it is key. And meditation was created to aid us to experience higher truths, higher consciousness, spirit, soul. But that's why it exists, is that it's a methodical way to connect to something deeper.
Now, you have a really interesting theory in your book that our bodies are really holograms. Can you explain that for us?
It's connected to a number of concepts within physics, but M theory, which is, I would say, the most advanced of all the modern day energy physics disciplines, has as a pillar of its understanding of reality that there are two realms that reality exists in, maybe more, but for sure two realms. And one is the familiar realm of the universe that we live in, the physical bodies we inhabit, the reality we perceive through the senses. But they also say there's another realm that is pure energy, and that the two coexist. And in fact, it's absolutely necessary that the energy realm exist in order for our more familiar physical realm to exist at all. So the energy realm can exist without the physical, but the physical realm can't exist without the energy realm. One step further that M theory goes with this is that the physical universe not only depends on the presence of the energy universe, if you will, the energy verse, it is actually created by it. And it's created holographically. So in this two-dimensional pure energy realm, there is a hologram. And that hologram projects the physical universe. And this is echoed with our own bodies. So our physical body is a holographic projection. But we have a look-alike hologram subtle energy body that exists in this energy realm that is really projecting, creating, and sustaining the physical body. So what this means for our understanding of healing and why it's so key is that if you change the hologram, if you change your own hologram, you immediately change the holographic projection, the physical body. It's instantaneous, doesn't take any time. Now, changing that hologram is not just the result of a whim. It's where our convictions about who and what we are, our emotions, our soul nature, that's where they all exist. There's a good friend of mine who said, many people say that it's all in your mind, that you're getting sick. And he remarked, well, yes, but that's the worst place for it to be because it has the most power to affect the physical body. So these are girder-like aspects of ourselves and not to be thought lesser because they're seemingly more effervescent, non-physical, as opposed to this seemingly solid, permanent world that we're in. But in reality, they're much more important to the structure and sustenance of the entire universe, and it's the same with our physical body. So when we are meditating, what we're doing is we're tuning into that subtle side of ourselves. And when we have emotions, positive emotions kind of reverberate through that subtle energy body and harmonize it. Negative emotions reverberate through that subtle energy body and they destabilize it. And if this persists, we have long-term negative emotions, what's happening at a physical level is that the functions of the physical body to create proteins, to manage the interactions between the 60 trillion cells that are in the average adult human body, those functions are being disrupted. And if our emotion is not so strong, we might not see any result of it for years. But unfortunately, once we see a result of it, we see diabetes, we see a heart condition, we see early stages of cancer. We didn't see it forming before from these negative emotions. Again, the solution, get yourself into positive emotions, get your energy body into a harmonious, health supporting level of vibration. And that can heal or help heal the negative consequences of long-term negative emotions.
In your book, you also share some examples of instantaneous healing. So apparently, it doesn't necessarily have to be a journey to unravel everything that's come before that created the disease, that we actually have the power to switch it like that.
We do have the power. There's one story that I'll tell that is very inspiring. A young woman named Barbara Kumiski came down with multiple sclerosis when she was 16. By the time she was 31, she was just about gone. Her parents were considering putting her into hospice. She was near death. She'd had just a decreasing ability over all those years until at that point, her hands were curled up towards her forearms. So she really didn't have much use of her hands at all. Her feet were similar, so she couldn't walk. She had no bladder or urinary control. She couldn't survive without oxygen. And she had lost, as you would imagine, tens and tens and tens of pounds. But she prayed for people. She came from a very strong Christian family. She had a minister who visited her regularly and encouraged her to pray for others. And at that point where she was about to die, she wasn't in a sense of any self-pity. She felt like she was a contributing member of the human race, and that even though she couldn't do physical things, she could pray for people in a way that gave her deep fulfillment and satisfaction. And in that day, she heard a voice that said, "Get up and walk." And she did. She got up and walked. She took all of the support items off of her, like oxygen, etc. And by the time she had gone from her bedroom to the living room of her parents' house, her body had filled out, her hands had straightened out, her feet had straightened out. She'd gained 30 or 40 or 50 pounds, and she was able to do a ballet move that she hadn't done since she was 16. So now she would say that I don't really know why I was given a miracle, but I do know that I felt whole and complete and loved and connected to the divine. Now, you could say that that miracle took an instant, but building up that degree of trusting faith in the divine, particularly when you seem to be getting dealt a very bad hand, was where the real power was built up. And then it could heal her in that instant because she had prepared really all her life.
That's an amazing story.
She had been a patient of a single doctor for all those years, went to see him the next day, and he said, "You have no symptoms whatsoever of multiple sclerosis."
Wow. So much hope. So much hope. Joseph, you talked about soul powers. Could you go over those 3 soul powers that you shared with us?
So your emotions, we have more ability to influence our emotions than we tend to think. We tend to act just reactively to good news or bad, and that makes us happy or sad or thrilled or angry. But it's more of a reactive process that most of us do. But we can take more charge of that than we know. And again, one of those secrets to that is to meditate, to learn to become calm, but in particular, to learn to feel your own life force, your own energy in your heart, and learn, as they say, to lift your heart, to lift your spirit. We can do that. That's within our powers. Belief, belief is an innate part of our powers. Choose good beliefs. Be deliberate about it. Be conscious about it. Experience them. And then connect to spirit. We are all so much more than we know. And the more deliberately and determinedly you learn to sit still and relax and connect, the more you will feel this magical presence of yourself and the spirit that's everywhere around you. And you'll get those great experiences of joy or love or peace that just can't be denied. These are powerfully transformative experiences. And they're all within your realm of control.
Why does it seem easier to tap into negative beliefs or to believe something negative more than something positive? I hear it all the time. People blame the government, they blame media, they blame religion, they blame their parents. Maybe some of that is true, and maybe some of it isn't necessarily so. Maybe it's them who's interpreting the circumstances in a negative way.
I think you answered yourself without meaning to answer yourself, but it is a critical thing, which is I hear it all the time. We are just flooded with negative messages, negative beliefs, limited beliefs, and you have to be very methodical about if you're going to be open to some of that, and it's very hard to not be open to hearing some of it. Spend twice as much time with positive things, whether that's positive other people, which is a great way to buoy yourself up, whether it's reading positive books, whether it's meditating, whether it's going for walks in nature. Be very conscious of working against that tide of negative energy that surrounds us. And, it's particularly pronounced right now, but it's also been pretty steady for as long as I've been alive. That there are the naysayers, there are the people who just don't believe anything can be positive. So it's nothing new. And, maybe to just look at it as a blessing that's going to push you to being more positive, to seizing control of the things in your life you can control and making them more positive, less unlimited, more full of that divine love and joy that is what we're all really seeking.
Yeah, I think that the more time we spend listening to negativity, the more we are programming our subconscious that is the way life is.
It's not simple to get beyond it, but it is possible.
Joseph, tell us the name of your book.
The Physics of Miraculous Healing.
Perfect. And where can we send people who want to know more about your work, about this book, or any of your other books?
You can find me at my website, josephselbie.com. My spelling of Selbie is somewhat unusual. It's Selbie. So Joseph Selbie with an IE.com. And that'll get you started at least on anything you might be interested in.
Perfect. Joseph, thank you for being my guest once again.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this kind of show that is at least one part of the tide that can overcome all the negativity that we're surrounded by.
Exactly. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. You will find all of our conversations on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Make sure you check out the earlier episodes with Joseph. I'll put the link in the show notes. And please come visit me at thoughtchange.com. Pick up your copy of Learning to Listen. And while you're there, have a good look around because you can change your mind. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.